The global geopolitical scene is in an extremely dangerous phase, with conflicts in many regions of the world escalating and threatening global peace and stability. And this is a forecast for March, April, and May 2025. The Middle East, Ukraine, and even Turkey are the three regions that are currently preoccupying the international community, as developments may lead to geopolitical and military consequences for the months of March, April, and May. Middle East resurgence of conflicts in the Middle East have begun to escalate again, with conflicts, wars, political tensions taking on dangerous proportions. The resurgence of hostilities in regions may also trigger new military interventions by major powers, which could lead to more intense confrontations and even a conflict that will have an impact beyond the region, with possible implications for global security. Ukraine, the conflict is at its peak. In Ukraine, the conflict continues unabated, with fighting at its peak. The international community is watching the situation with concern, as the conflicts make the region one of the most dangerous places in the world. Europe's continued support for Ukraine and Russia's counterattack increase the likelihood that this will escalate, potentially involving other NATO countries or even provoking a wider conflict in Europe. Turkey, social unrest and political instability. In Turkey, the situation is extremely tense as society reacts strongly to President Erdogan's policies. Demonstrations and rallies and protests against the government have intensified, with the government resorting to strict policies of repression. So if the situation in Turkey continues to escalate, the country may face potential political destabilization, which could cause wider political and military risks in the region, even creating new conflicts or leading to more extreme confrontations with neighboring countries. The forecast for March and April 2025. The months of March and April 2025 are expected to be very critical for the global geopolitical and military situation. The failure of diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine will lead to even more intense hostilities, with the possibility of other powers being involved in the war. International organizations and major powers should take immediate action to avoid the spread of violence and prevent these conflicts from turning into international wars and into a world war. In Turkey, social and political tension will continue to develop. We may witness significant developments in the country, such as political upheavals and military interventions to control the internal situation. The impact of a potential crisis in Turkey could reach far beyond the country's borders, increasing uncertainty in the region and creating new challenges for international relations. Escalation of the conflict, leading to serious consequences such as a coup in Turkey and the use of tactical nuclear weapons in Europe, is a scenario that cannot be ignored. The developments we're witnessing in the region, together with the increased tension between major powers, highlight the dangers of the absence of effective diplomacy and the inability to control tensions. If the situation in Turkey remains explosive, it's very likely that we'll see a military overthrow of the existing political order. If social reactions intensify and military leaders consider that the only solution is direct intervention, this could cause complete political destabilization, as demonstrations and repression could escalate into a conflict within the country. At the same time, the war in Ukraine seems to be intensifying without a peaceful resolution in sight. This impasse may lead to serious provocations or fabricated incidents with the aim of provoking a general conflict. In such a context, it's not impossible to create an excuse to blame the opposition forces, and possibly Russia to react with a military escalation that may even reach the use of tactical weapons if it feels that its interests are threatened in any extreme way. The possibility of such an escalation to the level of nuclear conflict, although undesirable, cannot be ruled out, and as the strategic interest in dominance and influence in geopolitical zones between great powers leads to dangerous dynamics. Some are pursuing a global war to redraw the powerful geopolitical balances. In this case, the provocation could be their last card, an attempt to gain strategic advantage through the acceptance of an irreversible war. The international community, although it's already begun to show concern, is called upon to take the conflict in these regions seriously and to invest in a strong diplomatic strategy to prevent the worst-case scenarios. The challenges are great, and any oversight in domestic and international politics can have disastrous consequences. If the situation is not controlled, if geopolitical conflicts escalate beyond all control, the world may find itself faced with situations that will bring incalculable consequences. If Turkey sinks into political destabilization and social unrest escalates into military overthrow of the government, and if the war in Ukraine escalates into a full-scale conflict between Russia and the West, and if the major powers engage in strategic provocations that justify a general conflict, the possibility of a world war becomes increasingly realistic. The use of tactical weapons to clear strategic positions and weaken the adversary may be seen as a solution by some countries seeking to gain geopolitical advantage. The consequences of this scenario are not just military, but also include ecological, economic, and humanitarian disasters that could affect humanity for generations. Possibly, if there is no diplomatic reversal, if no extraordinary action is taken to diffuse the tension, the second half of 2025 could bring an international conflict that would have an impact on the very existence of the global community. Such a conflict could lead to millions or even billions of victims, not only from direct military attacks, but also from the chain reactions that will result from this: social collapses, economic crises, and ecological disasters. Please leave your comments about this, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.